Can you know what you think? You can hashtag Hardgrave if you want to send a tweet. Also, Gary.Hardgrave at skynews.com.au. Well, stellar program. Plenty of people joining us tonight, as you might imagine. Lisa Goddard's with me here in Brisbane. Former Labor Senator and Minister in a couple of successful governments. Graham Richardson's joining us from his bunker in suburban Sydney, and also joining us from her bunker on the Northern Beaches, the one, the only former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Bronwyn Bishop, is joining us. And good evening to each of you. I mean, the poll is out tonight, Richo, and it shows that it's 53-47. How many seats are you going to predict? 85, 90? Where's Labor going to go tomorrow?
Oh, look, I think it's hazardous predicting numbers of seats. I expect at least high 70s, 78, 79. But whether or not it's going to jump in some sort of landslide number, I don't know. I don't predict that. I just predict it'll be a solid Labor win. I think all the polls indicate where we're headed. And I think, don't get bitter about it. Everyone gets a turn, and I think it's ours.
Fair enough. And Bronwyn Bishop, I mean, 53-47, the news poll is, I think, had Shorten at exactly that same number this time 3 years ago. That in itself should be a bit ominous for some. Hard to predict, isn't it, Bronwyn?
Yes, it is. Look, you can't be guided by those across the board numbers. It's seat by seat, as so many people say. And one of the problems that pollsters have is they always have a difficulty trying to poll the National Party's vote. So what we're really looking at is there is still a pathway for the Prime Minister to win. And I think the Labor Party is aware of the fact that they know that there's still a pathway. Now, here's the problem. We've had a campaign where we've had Mr Albanese being like the Fabian Society, being a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's portrayed himself as innocuous, nice bloke, from a poor background, done good. You know, that's the sort of thing that you expect in Australia. That's the sort of opportunity that is for all Australians to have. If you have aspirations and you work hard, you can make it in this country. And, one of the reasons for that is because for the most part of post-war Australia, we've had good conservative governments, starting with Menzies, which have put good policies in place, which has meant that everybody's had an opportunity. So the difficulty with Mr Albanese is we haven't seen what he really espouses. We haven't seen what he really is going to do should he have the reins of power. And that frightens a lot of people. Frightens me, frightens young mums, it frightens young small business people who really say, is he going to tax us out of oblivion? What is he going to do to change it? Is it going to be like the revolution that he wanted always to have, that we almost had with the last proposals by Mr Shorten? Nobody believes that it's benign. Nobody believes that it's all about aged care and childcare. It's about a hell of a lot more than that.
Well, I mean, Lisa Goddard, you come from a tough part of southeast Queensland. I mean, you grew up in the workers' town of Ipswich. You're a typical aspirational type of person. You run your own company. You've been an international reporter for the 10 Network, reporting overseas in war zones and all that sort of stuff. The editorials in the papers, they've sort of split all over the place. Interesting. Fairfax, the Fin Review, rather, have backed the return of the government. Many news corporation papers have as well, some haven't. I mean, it's a pretty compelling argument that the Prime Minister is putting forward, isn't it, about the fact that he's guided us through some tough and unusual times?
Yeah, and we were discussing this before we came on air, Gary. I was saying that when you looked at what happened with a number of the state elections, so here in Queensland, for example, Anastasia Palaszczuk ran that really hard line of, I kept you safe. Now, people across Queensland fell for it. We have another 2.5 years of the Labor government up here because of it. However, when you look at what happened federally, we have a federal government coalition that has managed to keep businesses open, managed to keep people in jobs. We have an unemployment rate, despite Albanese not being able to remember it in that first week of the campaign, but we have people in jobs. We have, compare us to what's happening around the world, our economy is doing extremely well, but people don't seem to want to reward the government for that at all. And what we have, and I think what's really interesting is what's coming out of the pre-poll, people still going into the election booths not having made up their mind. That's what's frightening about this election, because you have such a huge number of people who are undecided or are swinging away from the major parties. So Paul Murray was saying it earlier tonight, he's been saying it for weeks and weeks, it will come down to preferences.